Hi everyone, thanks for watching or listening. Welcome to another episode of the Reach Out series, where we explore the intersection of human connection, technology, and mental well-being. I'm Yohay Elam, founder of TouchBase, an app that tackles loneliness by helping foster meaningful connections. And today, I'm glad to have with me Kevin Gibbs, who is a well-being specialist for high achievers. Hi Kevin, how are you doing?
Thanks for having me here. Hi. I'm doing well, thank you very much. And you?
Good, good. Yeah, all good. Strong
Yeah.
air condition here. Can't complain. Um, So, what you do sounds fascinating, especially as it combines communications, organizational strategies, employee well-being. But could you start a bit by telling us a bit about yourself and what drives your passion
Yep.
for empowering individuals and companies?
Yep, sure. So I'm gonna have to go back in history a little bit for this. When I was a small kid, my parents divorced when I was 5, and that led me to overeating. And then at school, I was teased for that and for being British. In Finland, a name like Kevin Gibbs was definitely not heard of when I was a kid. And my humor was British based. In Finland, only like I would say the past 20 years or so has sarcasm, wit, and so forth been a thing. So I was not understood. I was a weird kid, as it were. So uh, I really early on experienced a lot of trauma, and that led me to developing IBS. And in the end, that became so bad that I was ready to take my own life.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that happened when my kid was half a year old and I shouted at him for accidentally bumping my head. I was in so much pain that I just couldn't take that anymore. And
Mhm.
that's when I realized I wasn't the father I wanted to be. And I was 13 when I wanted to become a father. So
Oh, wow.
now as I finally had it, I was ruining it. That was my thought, basically. Um, I was not sleeping at all well. I wasn't able to do my work. I wasn't the loving husband I wanted to be. I wasn't the loving son I wanted to be. And I was failing in every way I could, in my own opinion. So I was very close to taking my life. And then my half-year-old kid started laughing when I was crying with my then girlfriend. And then I realized I have to do something because I have to be here for the boy. He deserves a father. So
Mhm.
that basically started me on my well-being journey, and I started doing anger management. I started learning emotional freedom techniques, schema therapy. I started learning everything I could from PubMed. That's published medical journals about IBS, sleep, so forth. And I trained to be a personal trainer, massage therapist, neurokinetic therapist. I
Oh, wow.
basically fixed myself and now I'm helping others. So that's my story and that's my passion because I realized that if you can go from being so badly in shape that you cannot live anymore, that everything that you eat makes you hurt, that
Mm.
you hate yourself as a person, to having virtually no symptoms and being able to help others, being a good father. I'm in a really good relationship nowadays. Different lady, but still a wonderful relationship. And if you're able to do that switch, then you're able to do switches for virtually anyone who has some kind of trauma. I might not always be able to do that for everyone,
Mm.
but it's possible. And that really inspired me. So then, working from individual basis, so I've worked with massage therapists, I've coached experts, I've worked with parents, high achievers, leaders, semi-pro athletes,
Oh,
parents, so all over the place. From that to realizing that, wait, I can only treat one person at a time, which I
right.
love doing, but how about if I could do more? How about if it could change a company, the way they work, and that could change all of their employers' lives. So if you have like a 150 employees and all their lives change, that's massive.
Yeah, if you can influence a few people in the company and change the what's called company DNA.
Yeah.
then it's felt everywhere. I see it in companies where the spirit of the founder, even if the founder is not involved in the company, still influences the workers for good or for bad. And
Yeah.
I think that if you can touch a few people, then you can make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. Just look at Richard Branson. I
Mm,
mean, that guy is so happy. He's, if I remember right, dyslexic.
mm,
And because of that, he's got empathy for people who have difficulties in learning or difficulties reading. And he takes that into account in his work. And what I've read about it, what I've seen is that he really cares for his workers, and that changes company culture. And is he doing well? Are his companies doing well? Yes, very well.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we had a minor laugh here, and I want to circle back to what you
Yeah.
mentioned about your child laughing.
Mm.
Is laughter also a part of what you're doing? I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of helping people, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, not only in terms of helping people, this is a good question, by the way. A very good question. Um, I wanted to be a stand-up comedian at one point,
Ah,
and the only reason I didn't do that was because of the childhood teasing. So I, of course,
mm,
felt that I am no good. Nobody likes me. Only my family likes my humor. And only later on did I realize, no, actually, my humor is universally liked. It's just that I went through a bad patch.
mm,
So maybe I'll do that later on. But what I have noticed is that when I coach individuals, particularly when I'm dealing with really, really tough traumas from their childhood, and that's kind of my specialty, dealing with those. Um, you have to have some humor. Now, you need to be able to read the situation, when to
yeah, not
actually
to be
joke.
frivolous, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I haven't had a single client who, when I've asked for a testimonial, hasn't said one of the best things was that we could laugh even when
Mm,
we're talking about bad stuff.
yeah.
So I think laughter is definitely a medicine, but you do need to know the dosage and where to put it.
Like with every medicine, I guess, has to
Yes.
be in the right doses. Okay, let's talk about the communication. Would
Mhm.
you communicate with your clients and have the occasional laugh as well? Communication is at the heart of what you do in a world where we have so much miscommunication, and it leads to stress and disengagement, some of the things you
Mhm.
already mentioned. How can companies use communication to empower employees and to foster a more positive work culture?
Well, that actually circles back to mental well-being first.
Hmm.
So if you think about communication, the communication that most people tend to do is transactional.
Hmm.
So I need that. Give me that. And we often forget that we need to look at the emotions. I mean, sure, if you want a coffee, it's not that big of a thing.
That's a
But
transaction. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But even then, you would preferably not say, give me coffee. Is could you please give me coffee? Or I would like some coffee. Could you please make me some? Something kind. But when you start thinking about communication through emotion and through active listening,
Hmm.
then you realize that behind the sentences, there's an actual core issue or want or need. So let's take an example of where a colleague, for instance, would say, you still didn't give me the paper, right? And you realize, okay, they want the paper. That's the transaction. But the
Yeah.
reality is they are feeling anxious about something, right? They're projecting it to you. Perhaps it was your fault. Perhaps you were supposed to give it earlier. But let's say there's a 2-week deadline. And you're thinking to yourself, there's 2 weeks? What the heck? Like, why are you shouting at me? There's 2 weeks. That's a defensive attitude that is
Hmm.
very easy to go to. And that stems from them using judgmental tone or language or posture in their body, right?
Yeah. It becomes confrontational.
Exactly. So now, if that happens to you, then you have to start thinking, okay, what is the actual issue? They know that if I give the paper in 2 days' time, they still have virtually 2 weeks. There's not a problem. So that must mean there's something else.
Mm.
So you can use active listening. Now, active listening is not only hearing the words, but hearing the emotions. This is something I think every leader needs to understand, and every person, basically, anyone should use this if possible. So then you could go like this. Okay, I understand you need the paper, and I hear that you're anxious. Is there anything else I can also help you with? Not just the paper. Is there something else that's giving you a lot of workload? And maybe they'll get a bit defensive, maybe not. You have to deal with that as it goes along. But let's say they say, well, yeah, I've got a lot of stuff going on. Then, okay, you've hit the nail on the head. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily the paper. So then you can try and help them figure out how to deload while at the same time ensuring that they understand you will get the paper to them. Sort of like de-escalate the situation instead of going, hey, you got 2 weeks still, man. Give me a break, because then you're getting a fight. You don't want that. And that's just between two people, but that works in a team too. If the entire team culture is empathic, understanding, active listening, and non-judgmental and non-violent in their communication, you will preempt a lot of issues. And if issues do arise, you can de-escalate really quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that's like probably the most important thing you could have in conversation, no matter your level in the hierarchy.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, it even sounds like preventative medicine of
Yeah.
trying to de-escalate before things escalate further.
Yeah.
And you said non-judgmental.
Yeah.
Does it apply always being non-judgmental, or are there points? I mean, a company, for instance, many companies do retrospectives at the end of a sprint, at the end of a quarter, a month, or whatever. They
Mm,
look back, what did we do? What did we do well, and we can repeat, and what we didn't do well. Is that a
mm.
point to be judgmental, or what's your opinion in general about judgmentalism, if there's such a term?
Well, it works. Be it a real word or not, it works.
Yeah.
Um, I would say never be judgmental in
Hmm.
any case, but always be factual.
Oh.
So, uh, a simple example would be if two people are talking with each other and you go, you said this and that did that. That's a judgment in a way. It's your fault for saying this.
Yeah.
A non-judgmental way is, and this is still factual, is when I heard you say this, it made
Hmm.
me feel this. It's not that person's fault. It's just that this is the feeling I got. It's the
Yeah.
exact same message, but through my feelings. Now, if we're looking at retrospectives of like, okay, past quarter, we've done this or whatever, you wouldn't say, okay, past quarter, everything went well, but John there didn't do his work. John sucks. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that's horrible. But you could say, for instance, this and this thing went well, and we had issues in this department which were caused by this and this and this thing. You're not telling any particular person that you are bad at this or you're horrible at this or you did some mistakes, but you can point out that mistakes were made. Now, that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that in one-on-one you can't talk about mistakes being
Right.
made. But even then, it's like, okay, so you did this and this happened, not you are the reason why we failed.
Hmm.
It's small nuances. Let
Yeah,
me
it makes
think
a
of,
difference.
yeah, let me think if I can think of a really good example for like just to show the nuance difference. Okay. Yeah. So let's take John Doe. John uh forgot to give a certain paper that they needed, and that therefore the entire production went into overworking mode for a week. Okay. So why did this happen? If we go the judgmental way, we can say, John, you didn't give the paper, so everything was backlogged because of you.
Mm.
The non-judgmental, empathetic way would be, John, for some reason, you were unable to give the paper. Would you like to tell us what happened? It's just a pure factual statement. For some reason, you didn't manage it. What happened?
Yeah.
You're not judging them. You're asking what happened. Simple as
Yeah.
that.
And instead of closing the door on them, you open the floor for John to express his 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 case. Yeah.
Exactly. And that can actually, if the company culture is such that everyone feels safe, which this non-judgmentalness will usually help in a lot. But if everyone feels safe, then they can say, well, I had a lot of family issues and I didn't talk about them. I should have. I should have asked for help. Then you go, okay, look, John, that's fine. Just let's figure out how we can get you to ask for help next time if this happens again.
Yeah.
Simple. Problem solved, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a much better way. In general, I find that yeah, stating facts and talking about tasks or things to be done, whatever you want to call it, is better than saying something bad about somebody's character, which is
Yeah.
which is this most judgmental way.
Yeah.
Um, just to follow up on that, are there any specific communications frameworks that you can recommend for organizational excellence? Anything?
Mhm. So I mentioned one already. Actually, I mentioned both, I think, but we'll recap here. So active listening,
Mm,
definitely. When you listen to anyone, don't just listen to their words, listen to their emotions and recap what they've said. So, for instance, if someone, let's go again the paper thing. Someone says that you still haven't given me the paper, then the recap would be, tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're pretty anxious that you haven't got the paper and you can't get working on it. And tell me if that's true and if there's anything else I can do to help you. You're
right.
already being empathetic. You've heard the actual core issue, most likely. Then you move from there. If they say, no, actually, it's fine. It's just that I've got this, then you can deal with that. But another one is well, I love this one. This is my favorite one, non-violent communication. It's
Mm,
absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to actually have to go back here for you to understand why I love it so much.
mm,
When I was in my first relationship where I got the kids, uh, wonderful lady, we had really good communication for the most part. But both of us had our own traumas, as is usual, and we used words that were sometimes judgmental or sometimes um, sort of like assuming.
mm.
And I began reading a book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yeah, I read that
And
as well.
you read it? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
long time ago.
That taught me so much, ironically enough, not about women, but about me.
Mm.
I began realizing, yeah, I actually do react to that. And I react to that as well. Like, what's going on? This was like 90% me, this book, basically. And that's why I suggest everyone read it. It's a really good book. That got me interested in communication. So time goes forward, and I find a book called Nonviolent Communication. And that explains why I reacted to the things that I reacted. So, Men from Mars gave me the what, and nonviolent communication gave me the why and the how to deal with it. That is definitely something everyone should try and use. Now, if you follow it word for word and as a script, it can become disingenuous and mechanical. But the basic framework is really clever. You apply active listening, you apply emotional understanding. So you try and figure out, is this what you're feeling? Then you apply non-judgmentalness. Okay, so when you said that thing, because you felt this, that made me feel like this, and that's why I reacted like that. And the other person then starts understanding, okay, it wasn't my fault, this is triggered by something that I'm feeling, and his reaction was triggered by something he's feeling. So it makes it much more logical and actually takes away the emotional defenses. And
Right.
it works in personal relationships, in family dynamics, between friends, and at work.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Talking about work, so it seems like employee well-being is becoming quite a priority in many organizations. And
Mhm.
what are some of the holistic strategies companies can adopt to genuinely improve well-being rather than just, ticking a box of, okay, we're doing that as well?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And actually, it's maybe a bit more complex than it seems
Mm,
from the get-go. So a lot of companies do have some well-being initiatives. They might have something like a gym at work. They might have some yoga now and again. They might give extra holidays. Um, they might have something like a standing table, all those. But then they might lack some really core things, such
mm.
as, is our communication clear? If you don't really know exactly what you're supposed to do, it's quite stressful. What
Yeah.
am I exactly supposed to do? Then you have to start asking for more and more questions to clarify that. And if the company culture isn't pro questions, then you might feel like I can't really ask this. So then you just try and do your best and get stressed out whether you're doing it well or not and get burned out over time because you're just thinking too much about what you're trying to do. So that's one thing. Make sure your employees know exactly what they're supposed to do. And if they don't, that they feel safe enough to ask you. And
Yeah.
that's where the non-judgmental, non-violent communication is priority. Because if they come to you and say, hey, I tried to do this, but I'm not really sure exactly what I'm supposed to do, and you go like this, it's your job. That's the last time they'll ever ask you anything.
Yeah. Not
They will,
a yeah, fruitful answer. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They will never ask you anything again. And then they give you a job that's either somewhat close to what it was supposed to be, nowhere close, or just half bummed. I'm not going to say the other word. But people burn out. They can't be able to do their job well.
Yeah.
And so that's what's going to happen very easily. So that's one really important thing. Another one is just simply ask people, what do you need to feel well? You can have anonymous questionnaires
As
or you
simple
can
as
have
that.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it works easier if there's like 10 employees. You can just ask everyone, like, hey, Michael, what do you need? If you got 1,000, it's a bit more difficult. But then you can have questionnaires that can be anonymous. Then you get some basic ideas that look, out of 1,000 people, 87.7% want better facilities, or they want uh, a psychotherapist at work or something like that.
Mm.
If you can provide that, you've just provided something for almost all of your workers that they really will enjoy. And another thing, combining technology and well-being at work, not necessarily AI, because AI therapy is a bit iffy in my opinion. You
Mm.
really want to have a human, at least so far. But something like gamification.
Huh.
So gamification may not be a term for everyone that they're familiar with. So most people have played some games at some point, and they give you a lot of dopamine when you get levels, when you get through whatever task it is supposed to do, right? So how about gamifying the tasks, gamifying the health? You have different levels, you get experience points, and you get some small perks, whatever, nothing like fancy super maybe. But you can have a leaderboard of, like, let's say Yohay is the best runner in the company,
Mm.
and he gets whatever he gets for that. And hey, like, Michael has improved his uh I don't know, sleep by 50% and his
Mm.
work morale by 20%. Yay, brilliant. You
Yeah,
know,
so celebrating successes as well. It's
exactly.
part of this gamification. Mm.
Yeah, or even without gamification, you can do it without, but
Right.
gamification can be a fun way, particularly when you start having more younger workers, because let's face it, the younger workers, they like gaming much more.
Yeah,
So why not bring it to work?
got it. And to follow up, how do you measure the success of well-being initiatives? You just, I mean, if it's a big company, you can just run the same survey, or are there other methods?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one way, particularly if the survey has two different things: what do you need and what are you not getting? So
Hmm.
in other words, particularly for uh, anonymous questionnaires, it could simply be, how are you feeling at work? What do you like about your work? What do you not like? Do you feel you have the opportunities to do what you really want to do? All those things. They will be particularly effective if they're not anonymous,
Hmm.
so that you can actually help them. But the problem with non-anonymous is that if the culture really isn't very open and very safe, people will not feel safe enough to give their innermost thoughts.
Yeah, and the results will be super positive all the time, and
Yeah.
like elections in not so democratic countries,
Yeah.
and
So
not useful information to for improvement.
exactly. So you could actually have two different questionnaires. You could have an anonymous one
Hmm.
and then the one where you put your name.
Hmm.
So then you could, see if there's, let's say John, I like John as a good name. Let's say John says in the actual named questionnaire that he would love to work more on social media, for instance.
Hmm.
You know, well, then you have a good hook there. You can talk to them immediately. Okay, what do you like about social media? Let's see if you actually know your stuff on that. And then you might go, wow, actually, John is way better at social media than he was in accounting. Let's hire him for that. He's better at it.
Ah.
Why not? But then the anonymous one, maybe John has written there that, uh, otherwise the job is really good, but we're asked to always come to work at 8 o'clock and I have kids, so it's a bit difficult. Then the company might go, oh, we didn't even think about that. Okay, can we somehow give flexibility?
Hmm.
Because they're bound to not be the only person who has kids, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's definitely one way. Um, ADHD moment. Can you ask me the question again so I can answer better for the follow-up?
The question, how do you measure the success of well-being
Thank
initiatives?
you. Right. So one way I would actually say do not measure is uh, pure KPIs because you're not getting the reasons why.
Hmm.
And the reasons why can be really important. So let's say somebody has had a really good run past year, and then the next 4 months, they've been doing sort of half and half.
Hmm.
Now, if you just look at the KPIs, you're thinking, well, they're not doing well anymore. Let's kick them out, or let's have a really stern conversation. But if you're measuring workplace well-being as well, maybe you can find out that, hey, it's not to do with the workplace, but their mother has just died and they lost
Hmm.
their house or something. There's too much going on in their life. Okay, how can we help? Then you can actually go and talk to them. Hey, we know you've had a heck of a hard time. How can we help you?
Yeah, I come from a point of empathy, which circles back to what we talked about before.
Exactly. Because honestly, if you feel you've been empathized with, you want to be better.
Right. That's a great
That's
point.
yeah, it's basic human behavior. Humans will behave for the most part the way you expect them to behave. So if you are blaming them all the time, you're basically telling them you suck, and they will start rebelling against that one way or another. One way is okay, you don't care about me, I don't care about you.
Mm,
Or another way is overworking, then they work really well for a year until they burn themselves out, and then you've lost a good worker.
yeah. Yeah, you want to
So
keep people on that right path between, well, pushing the limits, but not having the limits pushing them. And
exactly.
with empathy, it's a motivating factor. Yeah.
Yeah, so measure success through not just KPIs, but how successfully have you actually, as a leader, managed to make your team feel safe around you so that they can share things? And how successfully can you navigate their problems to help them become the better workers that they can be?
Yeah, no, makes perfect sense. Let's move on to another topic, but still
Mhm.
related, well-being, but around technology. Now, technology can be a double-edged sword. It depends on how you use it.
Mhm.
When it becomes to well-being, it can connect us or be overwhelming, all those notifications. How can organizations leverage technology to enhance well-being without contributing to burnout? I think you already began touching on that. But if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have,
gamification is definitely one thing.
Mhm.
Because if you feel that you are um, appreciated for what you're doing, then that gives you more energy and more motivation, and that technology can help you with that. One thing is also clarification. So I used to work in one company that was actually a really good company, but they had one big issue. And I was not in those days working with them in the well-being sector. I was doing other things, but I noticed this then that they had literally about 30 or 40 different communication channels and groups.
Ooh,
Yeah. So you would have like five different video groups, 10 different groups for social media, five different announcement communication channels. You're going like, how the heck can I sort this all out? You have a CRM, you have Telegram-based things, you have WhatsApp-based things, Discord maybe. They didn't have that, but you have all of those. At some point, you're just gonna get burnt out from the fact that there's too much information all over the place.
yeah, you have to jump from
So
one thing to another all the time.
yeah. Yeah, and that's multitasking. And we know multitasking lowers IQ by approximately 15 points, and it lowers your focus by, I think, was it 20%, if I remember right? Can't remember for sure. But anyway, it lowers your focus by quite a lot. So simply making sure that the technology you use is there for clarity and purpose and helps in every way possible will do a lot. So if you have currently, let's say you have emails, you have an announcement channel, then you have different kind of channels for different parts of the work, try and see which ones you can combine, which ones need to be seen by which people. For instance, somebody who does
Mm,
video work doesn't really need to be necessarily in the social media part if they just make the video and the social media people edit it.
yeah,
They don't need to be there. So by doing that, you can already help your employees focus better and feel better. Then there is, as we mentioned, the gamification. So you can give them, let's say, workers smoke a lot at your workplace. And you know that if they smoke a lot, that's definitely going to affect their both their mental and physical well-being. So let's say you make a 30-day challenge that you make a gamified version of with some technology. And every time they manage to have one day where they don't smoke, or let's say they reduce from smoking a pack to half a pack, whatever, they get a certain amount of experience points.
mm,
And they get to choose themselves what perk they get at the end. So it's really meaningful for them. Because let's say your perk at the end is a week's holiday extra per year, but somebody loves their work so much that they don't really want to go on a holiday. Well, it's not motivating for them. But if for them it's like, hey, you can choose that, or you could, for instance, choose that you could, hmm, let's say you could get uh, an extra 5 therapy sessions for physical therapy because we know your knee hurts or
Mm.
something like that. They go, yeah, fine. This actually will help me. This is nice for me. So something that motivates them, right? That can really help a lot in motivation, in well-being, particularly if those things also just make them uh, more well-being.
Yeah.
If their knee works better, they can walk better at work, they can get to work better. If they get on holidays with their family, then they can have more meaningful time with their family and they can feel more recharged,
Mm.
just so forth.
Yeah. So it's something that is personalized to them.
Yeah.
And you mentioned meaningful time and technology. Well, what I'm doing at TouchBase is helping
Mhm.
foster meaningful connections. And at the workplace, um, how can we ensure that technology fosters genuine connections within the teams? We talked about the company and the employees, and also
Mm.
the communications with all those endless Slack channels. But how can we foster also better the technology does foster better connections within the workers, within teams?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because first we have to define what does better mean in this case.
Mm,
So, do we mean more efficient? If that, it's pretty simple. You can have just technology that is so easy to use that people can write some basic stuff there and it writes exactly what they're meaning to, preemptive writing. Makes
yeah,
it quick, makes it fast. Or even you can have like LinkedIn has pre-selected things you can just click, makes it really quick. Okay.
right,
But that's emotionless.
right.
So if by better we mean more meaningful conversations that allow for creativity,
Yes,
that allow for uh, team building, that allow for feelings of oneness, of unity, then those communication channels, that technology should prompt people toward that.
mm,
So maybe it could be something like asking mini questionnaires within the chat program itself, like, hey, have you remembered to look at the positive things for today? And is there anyone you want to tell about these positive things at work? Or or you mentioned last week to this employee or your colleague this thing, and they answered that. Have you remembered to ask them about it again? So
ah,
like, prompting you to remember your colleagues, that can really build a lot of feeling of community at work.
yeah. So or if I can use paraphrase it and say it's maybe technology that helps people feel they're being heard.
Yes, that's absolutely brilliant. Yes.
Thanks. Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about you work with high achievers.
Mhm.
Talk about a bit leadership. Great leadership, of course, is key to organizational excellence. How can leaders balance achieving results, which they're judged for, of course,
Yeah.
and also foster a culture of trust and collaboration?
Okay, let me think on that for a while.
I
I
think we
think you,
touched on it. Mhm.
yeah, we did. I'm just thinking of how to word it best. I think you need to build mutual trust
Mm,
and not rely on micromanagement. Because if you rely on micromanagement, people will feel pressured. If people will feel pressured, they might be able to give you something really good for some time, but at some point they will start feeling burnt out because they don't feel they can, make any mistakes. They don't feel that they can relax at all or be creative. So if you can build a company where the employees trust you and they have free range of like how they want to do things, and you give them deadlines and what you want to be done, but they can figure out how to do it.
mm,
And if they feel that they can always ask you for help, for questions, for clarifications, without any judgments from you, then they will usually work far better because they want to be a better worker. You basically want to be a kind person to that person who's kind to you. That's how humans work usually.
Yeah, it's so basic,
Yeah,
sometimes forgotten. Yeah.
exactly. Just I'm not religious, but do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. That is a brilliant quote
Yeah.
because that is how we work. So if you build a culture of safety, of trust, then you can start trusting your employees better as well, and they will usually deliver on time because they know that they can make mistakes and you won't shout at them. They'll feel more at ease.
Mm.
Um, and if you think about what a leader is versus a boss, I think that kind of explains it pretty well. We have in English a saying, she's or he is bossy, right?
Mm.
You don't say they're leader-like, they're bossy because bossy is negative, right? So
Right.
if you're all the time saying you have to do that, you do this, instead of let's work together to get this done, and then you micromanagement, hey, you're not doing that well, you're not doing this well, it's not going to work. Not for long anyway. And
Yeah.
I can't remember the company right now. There was a big animation company, or was the game? No, gaming company that I remember reading about a while ago, where in the interview they were asked like, why didn't this game get done on time? And the answer was we were so badly micromanaged that whatever we did, the leaders told us we have to change it without even consulting us, and we're the experts. They want it in a certain way instead of giving us the main goal. And then we had to redo everything like dozens of times,
Oof.
and therefore it was late. That's not, you're hiring those people because of their expertise. So delegate, let them do the work.
Yeah, and if you don't trust them, don't hire them in the first place, or fire
Yeah,
them if needed. But
yeah,
if you, yeah, yeah, trust is so critical in in getting things done, or having a good safe environment, and all
exactly.
that. So yeah, so I think you mentioned this. I mean, micromanagement is one of the pitfalls.
Yeah.
And would you say that also being disengaged of, I don't know, it's your job? I mean, such an attitude is, I mean, at the other extreme is also negative.
Yeah, so that boils down to what I was talking about earlier,
Yeah.
the questions. So if you just tell your employee that not employee that it's your job, you're supposed to know, and they can't ask you any questions, well, that's not going to lead very far because if they need to know something and they don't know it and you don't answer, then they can't do their job. So yeah, definitely have to also be ready to take part in their job, even if you have hired them for that job. It's basically a question of delegation. If someone can do what you know how to do or what you think needs to be done at, let's say, 80%, even sometimes 70% as well or as much as you need it to be done, that's a good delegation because that means you might need to help them with the 20-30% a little bit to guide them. That's fine. You've still delegated 70-80% away from your work.
Hmm.
And that helps a heck of a lot. But talking about pitfalls, what you were just saying, I would like to circle back to that
Yeah.
because I've been talking about empathetic, um, assertive, but still non-judgmental communication that can be taken too far. So there's pitfalls in that too. Um, if we're talking about emotions and communication, there's several different pitfalls you can have as a leader. You can be too authoritarian, and that is sort of what you just said, like that's your job, just do it. I don't care, you're supposed to do it. Or it can be like telling everyone what they're supposed to do and not hearing any counter arguments. Like that's a boss. In my opinion, a leader is someone who helps others lead themselves as well, and that allows them to ask you questions and even criticize you in a constructive way, because you can make mistakes as well. So that's one really important thing. Being too vague, that's a big pitfall. So if you give too vague a goal, particularly if you don't allow them to ask any questions, that can spiral down really quickly. So once I was given a job at one company to source some information from one group that we were in, and then I realized I'm not even in that group. You haven't like let me go in that group. And I said, oh, okay. Then they put me in that group, and then I realized that the work they gave me is impossible because it was so vague. There was so much information that I didn't know what I was supposed to find from here. So I had to ask them 4 times of clarifications until I found out what it was I was supposed to do. That took me about a week with the communication back and forths, you know? It could have just all been done really simply. Hey, I've added you to this group. This and this and this information is what I need you to find out. Please view the group and ask me anything you need to know. And then once you ask one question, okay, this is the answer, done. You know, it takes a while. Having to ask, re-ask, it just takes ages. So that's a big pitfall in communication as a leader. Too soft. That's a big one as well. So kindness and empathy, very important, but you have to have your boundaries. You can't let people walk over you. That's not leadership anymore. That's being a walking mat. That's not good.
That turns the workplace into a social event where, okay, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
I'll do it at some point. Mañana. I'll do it next day.
Let's have another round of beers and
yeah. No, not getting anything done. So you have to be assertive as well. You have to have the boundaries. You have to be sure that everything gets done that needs to be done without micromanagement. And this actually ties to workplace well-being in an interesting way, because I don't think this is talked about enough, but teasing at workplace. It happens a lot. I have seen it, I have experienced it, and I have friends who have experienced it very, very roughly. And one big thing is the leader not doing anything about it. So if you don't have a safe environment, you don't want to go and tell the leader. Even if you feel that you can tell the leader, if the leader goes, oh, well, I'm sure it'll be okay. Well, great, thank you. That was really helpful. If they are like a wet rag, they're too kind, they don't act decisively, that is going to cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's being disengaged.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be sometimes the boss, even if you are a leader. Sometimes you just have to step in and go, hey, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And I think those are probably the main pitfalls in leadership for me, at least.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Quite a few. And we talked about leadership and organizations and all that. Maybe move a bit different area. We talk about meaningful connections. Do you see a role for technologies like mindfulness? Sorry, it's not a technology, a way of doing things, or other similar things. Do you see a role for that?
So, if I hear you right, you're asking like techniques like mindfulness, will they
Yes.
be useful at workplaces? Definitely, if implemented in a good way. So you can also perform mindfulness. That defeats the purpose entirely. So techniques like mindfulness are supposed to be something you do for yourself because you want to. If you are performing mindfulness, you're not mindful anymore. So yoga is a good example, actually. yoga can be just a physical exercise. You just go through the motions, but it can also be something called movement meditation, which is where you really do focus on your breathing. You focus on how your thigh feels when you're putting most of your weight there. You focus on how you feel tensions in your body. Can you relax your tensions when you're in a certain pose that is still demanding? Things like that. Then it's a meditation. So you have to use the tools correctly. It's a little bit like asking someone to saw a piece of wood with a knife. You're like, yeah, okay, it can be done, but it's gonna take a while. So if I ask you to be mindful to start focusing on your breathing, but your focus is, this is so stupid. What the heck am I doing here? It's not gonna work. So instead of that, what you want to do is give different options for people. So in a more broad sense, we want to help you as our employees to feel better, and we want to know what makes you feel better, what makes you feel worse. Do you have anxiety? Do you feel that you move enough? Things like that.
Right.
Are you able to switch off from work when you get home? So if your employee says that, well, I move a lot, but I have to say I do think of work even like when I go to sleep.
Mm.
Then okay, how could we help you with that? Figuring that out, then using technology and techniques and whatever you have for that.
Right.
So don't try and put the square block through the round hole. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, for me, if I have even if things don't work well, I mean, I have a bad day at work in terms of, I don't know, something bad happened, but if I have a good relationship with my peers, if I feel this trust we mentioned,
Yeah.
then it's easier for me to disconnect from work, and I know that the next day, the same issue, problem with client or whatever will still be there, or I don't know, loss of traffic or whichever issue, but that I can disconnect. I'll get back to that when I get back to work.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you also see something? I mean, trust playing a role in how much you can disconnect from work when you go home?
Definitely, particularly if it is something that you can sort of offload to your peers or your boss. So
Hmm.
let's say you're my leader at work, and I go to you and I say, hey, look, I know there's like 10 minutes before I go home, but I just needed to tell you that this thing with the client just did not work out today. And I'd like to know if you can help me figure out what we can do about this. And then let's say the leader then says, yeah, hey, look, don't sweat it. Tomorrow morning when you come here, we'll work at it together. That's it. You're gonna be disconnected from it at home because you know your leader is gonna help you. You know you're
Yeah.
going to help. You're not gonna be thinking at home, how the heck am I gonna do this? My boss is gonna be so angry. Jesus, what do I do? You know, it helps so much. But that's not the only thing that really helps because I'll give an example of one client that I had. Now, I can't mention where they work because they asked me
Course.
to keep them anonymous, but it's a quite big Finnish company. They had, I think, 17.4 billion euro revenue in 1 year, so it's quite a big one. And he's like middle high level boss. And what his problem was exactly that, disconnecting at home. So he's a wonderful father, wonderful spouse, but he said he's got so much difficulties being mindful and present at home because he keeps on thinking about work. So he would wake 2, 3 times up at night, every night, thinking about work. So what we did was we treated some childhood traumas. So there was a lot of parent-related trauma there,
Mm.
and that made him overperform. and overthink. And then we also implemented like 15-minute breaks at work every now and again. So I said that don't necessarily schedule them in because then you're going to try and perform those breaks because he really
Right.
is a performer. Don't perform them. It's more like allow yourself to have breaks and tell your peers, your own leaders and those under you as well that, hey, sometimes I will need a break. And that will give you accountability because when you do habit changes, accountability is really, really important. So that might be you're telling your friend, your family member, whatever. Because this was accountability at work, I asked him, do you feel safe telling your peers, your bosses, and even those under you that you need breaks? And he said, yeah. So he told them. And at first it was choppy, a 5-minute break, then no breaks for the rest of the day, no breaks for 2 days in a row. But slowly he started having like 3, 4, 15-minute breaks. And what he noticed was that his communication got better, his time management got better, his organization skills got better, his work stayed just as good and in some cases even better. And when he got home, he disconnected because he
Ah.
felt more at peace already. And he knew how to delegate better because of the breaks, telling his coworkers, the coworkers said, hey, look, let us take a little bit of the heat, give us
Mm.
something. So he delegated more. This gave him freedom. And then he started doing exercise, which he normally didn't do much at home. He's got 2 small kids. So I said, look, start doing things like lifting your half-a-year-old kid a little bit or 1-year-old kid. He had 2 small kids. I think actually it wasn't one, it was 1.5 and half-a-year-old. Yeah. So I started lifting them like this and playing with them here and, squatting and stuff. Started getting more energy. The kids were laughing. He was having fun. Then I said, look, let's take some skin to skin contact with your wife and you can start talking about things. It didn't take long. I think it was like 4 months. His work is going better. His family life is going better. And his physical health is better. And he sleeps like a log. And his stomach problems were all gone because he had stomach problems too.
Mm.
You
Yeah,
really need breaks.
yeah. So yeah, taking a break here. I mean, taking breaks here was one technique to do that.
Yeah.
But what stuck in my head from that story is, well, circling back again to the trust factor.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable telling people around you at work that you need breaks? And the answer was yes. So
Yes.
that's a good place to start.
Exactly.
Yeah, that
Sorry, I'm
means
gonna still say one thing here, Yohai,
sure.
to
Go
that
ahead.
one. Yeah. So one thing that a lot of people don't think about when thinking about work is childhood traumas or any
Oh.
emotional traumas. So although I help people with nutrition, sleep, exercise, and so forth, it all really boils down to psychological well-being with all of my clients, be it at work or individual clients, like teams or individuals. Now, of course, you can't start talking about all of your most vulnerable traumas with all of your workmates. That just doesn't work. But knowing that you have traumas and dealing with them yourself with my help or with somebody else's help is really important because it helps you perform better in every part of your life. But also understanding that other people have similar traumas that they're not talking about helps you be more non-violent in your communication, less judgmental, because you can understand that, hey, every time I mention this kind of a thing, he gets a little bit triggered. Okay, there's probably something behind that. Let's be a bit more kind. Let's work around this and see if I can say this in a nicer way, in a different way. It can help a lot.
Yeah, traumas, yeah, they accompany us all our lives, and I guess if if we're if we feel somewhat comfortable talking about some of the traumas with
Mm.
people around us, then we become a bit more vulnerable, then the connections are much closer.
Yeah,
And
without a
yeah,
doubt.
and also organizations can do something to foster these meaningful connections and I
Yeah,
mean creating a space with safety and trust.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the future. Well, there are always new techniques and new
Mm.
studies, new information. How do you see the intersection of well-being, communication, organizational strategies evolving in the future? Are there any trends or innovations that excite you that are of interest?
Hmm. AI is becoming a big thing. I think not yet. I've seen some not so good advice in terms of therapy and communication coming from AI. Definitely very bad advice. But I think long term, we're going to see companies uh, hiring, if you will, AI uh, communicators, AI
Mm,
coaches at workplaces too. And if managed well, if taught well, those can, in my opinion, be a pretty big thing. For instance, let's say at work, you realize that, every time you're sitting on your chair, you have a huge backache, whatever it is. And you can talk with your boss about it, or maybe have some well-being expert in there, but maybe they're busy. Maybe you can't do anything about that now. Maybe you don't know what to do to help your back. And you're like, trying to figure out how you can concentrate on your work. But maybe if you have the AI coach, you can really quickly write that, hey, this is my setup. You know the setup that I have. I'm having a backache. What can I do? And you can get some really nice answers maybe at that point. That can really speed things up. And I
mm,
think that can be something that we're seeing both physically and later on psychologically when it's more trustworthy coming into workplaces. Now, I have a caveat there though. I don't think, though maybe I'm getting old, I don't know, but
you don't
I,
look old, huh?
I don't think that can ever fully replace meaningful human-to-human connections.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with the example with the backache and yeah, on began moving in the chair while you began talking about it
Yeah.
is a classic example of where an AI chat and AI personality can help. It's
Yes.
something very physical, your back. But when it comes to let's say I have a difficult conversation with a colleague and
Mm.
w in my place, would you use AI to prepare for that conversation, or do you find it a bit not real or problematic or
You can,
mm,
but there is a small caveat there, I would say. You need to know how you prompt the AI. And
mm,
that's the big issue. Because, like, for me, being an expert in these things, I can prompt it pretty well to help me sort of communicate with myself, as it were, have a conversation of how do I deal with this. But if you have no knowledge of it, particularly with GPT being overly kind all the time,
yeah,
you can run into problems. And I would use it only for really general things like,
mm,
okay, we're gonna be talking about this issue. How could I maybe prepare myself for it? Instead of, okay, I know he's going to say exactly this. What do I say in like as a reply? Unless you've prompted it well to use non-judgmental conversation techniques and all of that, you know, it might not give you a very good answer. But I think give it a few years, it will start getting better and better.
yeah. The pace is amazing, and maybe Kevin, you'll develop such a tool one day, which will have the everything inside for people to use.
No comments.
No. Yeah, but eventually, in my opinion, being able to, yeah, it's something that to speak with other people maybe it needs practice, but most of the practice, in my opinion, should be with other real people and not in speaking to an over supportive chat GPT.
Exactly. It can give you ideas, but I
Mm,
think you should use it more like a research tool, like, hey, what videos or books should I read, watch, what kind of conversation should I have to get better at this?
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Use AI, ChatGPT to give you bring you a few steps forward, but then when it comes to communication, it's up to you, up to the person
Yeah,
who wants
do
to
the work
communicate.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, we're getting closer to the wrapping up. Do you have any advice you would like to give either organizations or individuals when it comes to achieving excellence while prioritizing well-being, finding that balance
Mm,
between moving forward without forgetting about the people in your
yeah.
team?
There's there's a company that I found out through LinkedIn. I
Mm,
think they were called Marvel. So not the Marvel comics, but they, if I remember right, they're a recruiting company. What stuck in me was that they are now working a 4-day week, and their boss said that everything has improved after the first bumps and issues with it, but people are more engaged at work. They feel happier. They have more free time. They are more productive. And I think one of the reasons is that they have the extra motivation of I'm gonna get a whole free day. And to be able to do all the same work, I have to be better at time management and organization.
mm,
So it forces you to be better, but also have more free time. There is another way of doing this too, which I've seen in some other companies where they work 4 to 6 hours. So not 46, 4 to 6 hours a day. If you manage to work 46 hours a day, please tell me how. But there's a lot of science showing that effectively an 8-hour workday is actually about 5, max 6 hours, usually around 5 hours, in some cases even 4 hours, because you gotta have your coffee breaks, you gotta have your meal breaks, you have to have some time when you're talking with people, and sometimes you just have to zone out. So some companies are doing so. They actually have like they use a Pomodoro method. If you've heard of that, it's
mm.
like 25 minutes of working. You can change that a little bit, but meaningful work for 25 minutes, some do a little bit more. Like schools have 45 minutes, right? That's a bit
Right.
much in my opinion, but maybe like 25, 30 minutes. And then a small break. And there's research showing that even a 15-minute walk recharges your brain really well. So there's companies that are doing like Pomodoro method working with breaks. And then after about 5 hours of that, you're done. And just a
Yeah.
whole work day. You got the rest of the day free. And you can socialize with your other workers or like I mean colleagues, or you can go home or whatever. So combining something like that with well-being initiatives like we talked about earlier, that could be really effective for both performance and well-being. But you have to really think of it very well. You can't just say, okay, let's start working 5 hours a day. If you're doing the
Yeah.
same as you used to do at 8 hours, you're gonna get less done.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work. But that can be really effective. And that's actually what I do at home myself.
Ah.
I try to avoid, because I work from home, I try to avoid multitasking. So I've compartmentalized my computer to work and fun. There's two different accounts.
Ah, that's a good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've blocked YouTube and everything else on one side, and then blocked all work-related things on the other side, so I can't multitask. If I want to have a break that is to do with screens or anything like that, I can do that. Or if I want to go for a walk, I can do that, but I don't multitask. I don't go for a walk and then I have my phone and try and do stuff. Now, naturally, I don't
Mm.
always manage that, but that's the goal,
Ah,
and it
nice.
helps. Yeah.
Good. Maybe I'll try this divide and conquer method myself with
Yeah. And burn the land behind you.
yeah, yeah. Right, right. Okay, so anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'd like to circle back to what I talked about earlier to do with the traumas.
Mm,
So when workplaces think about well-being, we really often notice physical well-being. So there's things like, okay, let's have you walk on a walking mat. Let's have a gym at work. Maybe if they're more progressive, they might have yoga and they might have a personal trainer, massage therapist, and so forth. And that's all really good. But we're not thinking always about the clarity that we talked about earlier, because if you have too many choices, you get burnt out. If there's not clarity, you get burnt out after some time, or your work isn't as good. And even more rarely do we talk about the psychological well-being. Now, you might have a work therapist, which is fantastic if you have that. And you might have some initiatives like open door initiative and so forth. But I have yet not seen myself, and please do tell me if you have, or even if the
mm.
listeners have heard of, but I haven't seen a workplace yet where they actively ask you and give you the chance to deal with uh, emotional blocks you have, with childhood traumas and so forth, because probably because they're thought of as too personal, as non-work related or whatever. But let's say you have one of the schemas of schema therapy. So schema therapy is to deal with like childhood traumas. You have, for instance, a really common one that I see is uh, being a perfectionist at work or at home, and that can come from your parents telling you that you're not good enough, or at
Mm,
school being teach you're not good enough, or like one person I talked to a while ago, uh, he said that even if he took home A papers, but there was one B, then the parent might say, well, didn't they give out more A's? Like you should have had that as an A as well, kind of. Like what the heck is that good enough? You know what? Too
yeah,
much is too much. So that makes you a perfectionist. And
yeah,
perfectionism can actually burn you out. And people sometimes work against their schemas, against their uh, sort of like trauma related behaviors. So let's say as a child, you were always that down if you didn't do perfectly. You try and do your best all the time, but then you get mentally burnt out from that and you start doing the opposite. If I
mm,
can't be perfect, I won't do anything. Sod this, you know? And
yeah,
that can come out at work as doing just the bare minimum. So traditionally, a leader might then think, well, this person isn't good at their work or they just don't care and they will get fired. But a progressive leader might go, okay, you have the skills, but you're not using them. Why? What's going on? And try and dig into it. And if they find out that, hey, actually, they used to be a perfectionist and now they can't be bothered anymore, then help them with that. Because if you manage to help that, if you manage to change that person, they may well become the best worker you've ever had, and they will probably feel indebted to you for the rest of their lives.
right. Yeah, yeah. Causing such a triggering such a positive transformation
Yeah.
is undoubtedly a goal for many leaders at work or elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, on a optimistic note. So, Kevin, thank you very much for sharing your amazing insights today. It was a fun back and forth conversation, and
Thank
it's
you.
really inspiring to see the holistic strategies that can drive personal, organizational success. Just where can people learn more about your work or connect with you, find you?
Yeah, well, you can find me on LinkedIn, of course, Kevin Gibbs, but you can also go to my website, wellbeing mastery.academy. So it's wellbeing mastery as one word, dot academy.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. So, thank you very much again, Kevin. I had a great time. I'm sure our listeners will also have a great time listening to this. So that's it for this episode of the TouchBase Reach Out series. And you can subscribe on Spotify, and YouTube, and we'll be sharing shorts on various social media outlets. And yeah, you can download TouchBase in the Apple Store and Google Store and visit gettouchbase.com. So thank you very much again, Kevin.
Thank you, Yohay. Thank you very much.
Okay. And see you soon.
Yeah. Bye.